Right, good evening everyone. Welcome to the Tring Book Festival. It's great to see you all here. I'm absolutely delighted to introduce our guest today, who is the wonderfully talented comedian, writer and improviser, Rachel Parris. So many of you will know Rachel from her brilliant work on things like The MASH Report and Live at the Apollo, and as a star of the hilarious Austentatious. But we're here today to talk about her brilliant new book, which takes a beloved secondary character from Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice and puts her absolutely front and centre in a new sequel. So let's hear all about introducing Mrs. Collins. And can I start by saying, Rachel, how much I absolutely adored this book. I am a big fan of Pride and Prejudice, and any chance to kind of delve back in and find out more is just so appealing to me that I didn't want it to end. So
thanks for reading it. I've done quite a few interviews with people who definitely haven't read it, so that's already a win for me. Thank you. Yeah, I love Pride and Prejudice as well. So like you, like any excuse to read, absorb, be involved in any part of the world of Jane Austen. And really me writing this book is just an extension of that desire. My desire to see Charlotte Lucas have a story that extends beyond marrying Mr. Collins, although her marriage to Mr. Collins is absolutely an important part of this book. I thought I would begin by doing a quick reading for you. I'm going to do two over the course of the interview, one a bit more funny and one a bit more... Actually, I can't remember what I've chosen. Pick your own emotion. So, fan favourite, Mrs. Bennet. So this is a letter from Mrs. Bennet to Lizzie. Quite a lot of the novel takes place in... If those of you who are well acquainted with Pride and Prejudice will remember the Kent visit, when Elizabeth visits her friend Charlotte in Kent and she meets Colonel Fitzwilliam, and that's where Mr. Darcy proposes, and all of that takes place. That entire visit is quite a big feature of the start of my book, but we see it from, if you like, the camera points at a different angle. So anyway, this is from Mrs. Bennet writing to Lizzie while she's staying in Kent with Charlotte, trying hard not to just channel Alison Steadman. Dear Lizzie, I am forced to write to you, as I see you have no intention of writing to me, your own mother, even though you are away for what seems like a year. Things are very bad here. Hill is away visiting her sister who is dying, so you can imagine how we suffer. Your father, as you know, can hardly butter his own toast. Yes, he can read Latin, but can he fold his own nightshirt? Can he make a pot of tea? No, he cannot. I honestly do not think the timing could be worse. With Jane in London and you gallivanting around Kent, it is the worst time in the world for Hill to be away. I cannot imagine how her sister has chosen now to be so very ill. If indeed she is so very ill. I have been informed she is very ill. I've had 2 letters from Jane. She is such a good girl. She's told me that she has seen the Bingley sisters, such nice, well-dressed ladies, and has been to several parties. She must catch some attention in London with a face like hers. I hope she remembers to show herself off. Modesty will be her downfall, mark me. It will not be yours, I shouldn't think. I have seen Lady Lucas, as she styles herself, and she tells me that all is well with Charlotte and her new very fortunate situation. I've had to hear it from her, Lizzie, as you have not written any news. Have you met Lady Catherine? How large is the Collinses' house? Does Charlotte make it nice? Have you met any gentlemen on your stay? Have you worn your peach dress? Why must I ask these questions, Lizzie? Why have you not already offered the answers? The least you can do as consolation for your rejection of Collins is bring me news from Kent. Is Charlotte with child? Has she gained weight? Do they talk about inheriting our house? I am sure they do. I think you are coming home soon, and in truth I will be glad of it, particularly while Hill is away. My great fear is that when she returns, she may be grieving, and while I pity her, she will likely be at half capacity.
Brilliant. And there's many more moments like that in the book. I was laughing out loud, so thank you so much. Great to hear you read it as well.
Thank you.
Can you tell us what was the kind of initial spark that made you decide that Charlotte needed her own story?
Yes. Well, I would say a general interest in spin-off stories from Jane Austen inevitably comes from Austentatious, which we'll talk about later on, an improv show where we've done about 700 spin-off Jane Austen shows on stage now over the last 15 years. So various ideas have ruminated in my mind, but about 2 or 3 years ago, I had an idea, and this is a spoiler, it's the only spoiler I'm willing to give, an idea that during that Kent visit, when we meet Colonel Fitzwilliam, that I thought Colonel Fitzwilliam, I think from what the little we see of him, would have gotten on infinitely better with Charlotte than he would with Lizzie. A flirtation with Lizzie is hinted at, happens a little bit in Pride and Prejudice, but I wanted to see what would happen once Lizzie returns and Colonel Fitzwilliam remains there at Rosings. So that was the spark of that idea of that pairing, if you like, was a couple of years ago. And when I was in touch with an editor about non-fiction Austen ideas. And when I had that meeting in the diary a few months in advance, I thought, will I pitch her a passion project about Charlotte Lucas? So I started putting more thought into it and got together quite a full, lengthy, detailed pitch. And thankfully, she went for it.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, I'm glad she did. So obviously, Charlotte is not the heroine of Pride and Prejudice at all, but she very much is of this novel. So how did you go about kind of deepening her character?
Well, I think, as I say, partly through inhabiting those characters for years, the different Austen characters, I think whenever I read Jane Austen, I quite easily imagine an inner life for them. You know, I sort of imagine them. I think about, what would they say if they didn't say that? And I think the way I deepened her was imagining, I don't know if all writers do this, but I suppose a version of myself, but that was closest to Charlotte Lucas. I've always felt like Austen's many heroines, of course, they're very, very varied and very diverse. But for me, they sort of fall into two categories of the sparkly, shiny ones, like Lizzie and Emma and Marianne, and the more quiet, sensible ones like your Anne Elliot in Persuasion and your Eleanor in Sense and Sensibility. And Charlotte Lucas obviously falls into that category. And I've always found myself more drawn and more interested in the quiet, sensible ones. But I think Jane Austen showed us that she had like spunk. I think that the advice that she gives was always delivered quite dryly. You know, I think that she was quite sarcastic, and she was smart enough to be Lizzie's best friend, apart from Jane. So, and I think the decision that she made was artful. Jane Austen makes it clear that it was, you know, she was artful in making sure that she got a proposal from Collins. I think that shows that she was in control of what she wanted to do. And I liked that about her. I think she wasn't waiting around, or she'd sickened of waiting around, and she was like, no, I'm going to take my destiny into my own hands.
Yeah. So talking of Mr. Collins, so you know, he's such a kind of figure of fun in the original Pride and Prejudice. I felt here we still have that, but
Yeah.
I felt more sympathy for him, and I felt we saw him as more of a sort of human. So how did you kind of reevaluate his character and maybe reveal below that kind of pompous surface?
Yeah. I was really keen that Charlotte's marriage to him mustn't be the obstacle. It mustn't be the downfall of her. It mustn't be something that she has to get over. I didn't want that to be the case. And I could only really write about a marriage for years, because the novel takes place half during Pride and Prejudice and then for a few years afterwards, with it rooted in some reality. And I think if maintaining him as a sort of absurd caricature is neither true to what Austen wrote, actually, in Pride and Prejudice, but also would be very hard to work with. I wanted to see really what would marriage look like. And like with everyone, I feel like we saw him in certain circumstances in Pride and Prejudice, which was with a family he didn't know at dinner, at a ball where he couldn't dance, meeting people far above his station. So it was interesting to go, what does he look like when he's more comfortable? What does he look like in his own home? What does he look like quietly reading by the fire? What does he look like with his wife once he's got to know her? And also, why is he as he is? And Jane Austen gives us this. We're told that he had this awful father. In Pride and Prejudice, they describe him as illiterate, which didn't mean then what it means now. But it's clear that he had a difficult upbringing. So I have flashback chapters which delve into that. We see Collins as a child and we see Collins at university, and we start to understand perhaps why he acts as he acts.
I felt so sorry for him in that.
Yeah.
But no, it's great because he is still that pompous figure of fun.
Yeah, he's still that.
You definitely, you understand him more, don't
Good.
you?
Oh, thanks. Yeah, that's the goal.
Definitely. How hard is it? I mean, I suppose you're really practiced because of Austentatious, but how do you find it hard writing in the style of Jane Austen? Because you do capture it so well.
Oh, well, I'm glad to hear you say that because I found it came quite natural. Well, what has come out, as Austen as I could make it, as I wanted to make it, with it still sounding like a mixture of my voice and Jane's voice. No, that flowed fairly naturally. There was the odd phrase, the odd metaphor or word where I'd go, oh, is that? I'm not sure that actually. And sometimes I fought back against the authenticity because I would actually rather be understood by a modern audience than to get it right. And sometimes I would go for the joke over authenticity. For example, in that letter, I remember an argument with my editor. The phrase, I fear that she'll be at half capacity, I enjoyed too much. And they said that wasn't really a phrase, half capacity. That wouldn't have meant what it means now. And I was like, okay, but I want to include it anyway because I think the meaning of the humour still works. But no, I found it fairly natural, but the reason I hesitate to say that is because I haven't always got it right.
I think, it's definitely got a sort of modern, your twist on it.
Yes,
your turn on
yeah,
it,
exactly,
But talking about authenticity, and I don't know if this is giving too much away, but there's sort of what's verging on a sex scene in the book, which you would definitely not have got in Jane Austen novels. So has this shocked the purists, or did you discuss it with your editor?
Yeah, I did discuss it with my editor. In fact, my editor said, so there's two. There's her wedding night with Mr. Collins, which is interesting, and then there's a much better scene later on for her. I thought I couldn't leave her only having that experience. My goal for those was, it is a historical romance, it's a Regency romance, but I also wanted it to be not simple. I consider it a feminist romance. I wanted her to find her love when she didn't need it desperately. The main thing is about her finding herself, really. But in terms of those scenes, I didn't find them easy to write at all, but I did want to convey what the relationship was in both of those cases, because sex is just part of life and part of love, and I think you convey character through those scenes. How someone acts in that way shows who they are as a person, and what their experience has been. My editor, not the Collins sex scene, the other one, my editor's note was, you need to go further. She was like, I'm reading it and I want more. And I was like, but I want it to still be, it's a Jane Austen book. It's not Bridgerton, it's a Jane Austen book. She said, no, it doesn't have to be graphic. She said, she was just like, just write more, just go further in terms of actually the romance, just give us more of it, really. So that I found that difficult, but I'm glad with what came out.
And Charlotte deserved it.
Charlotte deserves it, bless her. Yeah, she deserves it.
So can you tell us a bit about the research you put into the novel? And, you know, we were talking a bit earlier, but I think it's
Yeah.
really interesting.
Yeah, I was perhaps a little naive about how much research I would need to do because of Austentatious. We do our homework in Austentatious. We did study nights. You know, we've read all the books several times, and we do study nights where we would like learn and teach each other about the pastimes, the manners, the military history, what was going on with the monarchy and everything. So I knew my stuff to a certain extent, but I hadn't factored in having a colonel be a main character, a colonel in the regulars, not in the militia. And I realised I was, quite clueless when it came to the military and the militia. Like, for example, the fact that the militia were wildly different to the regulars. The militia didn't go to war. Hence, Wickham and Denny Wickham, who features in the novel, can just, you know, they look resplendent and they're sent from county to county every few months, but they're a home front very much. And Colonel Fitzwilliam is a colonel in the regulars, and it's the Peninsular War. And I worked with a few, but really closely with one military historian, Dr. Zach White. And we had to, otherwise I couldn't really write it, a really full life for Colonel Fitzwilliam when he joined, what commissions he would have paid for and how he would have paid for them, what his daily life would have looked like in barracks, according with what was going on. And so I was keen to give him a really thorough military life, basing it on what was actually happening in Jane Austen's time. So that was a lot of research, and it came into it because in the end I wanted to include that as part of the story, for it not to be a burden to the story, but a point of interest in what would happen, how that would build his character as a soldier, what he was likely to have gone through. And that plays a big part in their love story, actually. But yeah, the research was more than I anticipated, and I didn't get to put it all in the novel, of course. I was like, but it's my first novel, so of course I'm not used to it. I was like, but trying to write all of it in, and my editor was like, why have you written this? This is completely irrelevant to the story. And I was like, but I know it. So I've got to put it down.
But it was really interesting finding out more about that time, because, you know, Jane Austen doesn't really write about that. Like, you know, someone goes off to war, or someone's got a plantation in the West Indies, or, you know, but you don't actually hear about the issues. And it was really interesting to see, you know, what Colonel Fitzwilliam went through.
Yeah, like she chose not to, and I can absolutely see why. Like she, you know, famously said she never wrote about two gentlemen on their own, did she? Because she said that's not what she definitely knows about. And I presume that it seemed like there was pretty good intel from what was happening in Spain into the newspapers, with quite a big delay. And, you know, if you went and bought a newspaper, I think her dad was quite well read and probably would have bought a newspaper occasionally, but she wouldn't, you know, the amount of knowledge she would have had to include that in her stories. She probably just didn't want to. It would have probably marred them the way that she wrote about them. Yeah.
So we were talking about kind of giving Charlotte the life she deserved. And, you know, there's been a lot written, hasn't there, about, you know, Jane Austen herself and, you know, having a proposal but then actually never marrying and that kind of thing. Can we talk a bit about sort of how you see Jane Austen? So, you know, some people see her as a early feminist writer, and some people think that's been kind of projected on her from a kind of more modern viewpoint. What do you think? Do you think she was a feminist, or do you think we like to find feminist interpretations in her work?
I don't know, because I do like to find feminist interpretations in her work. No, I mean, I do think that I think her work was feminist by what I understand feminist to be, and I think that she was. It's hard because, you know, a lot of the paths that she went down were dictated by circumstance, so it's hard to say, well, she chose to do this and she chose to do that. But I think that, you know, she she got offers and she didn't want them, and she chose writing, and the fact that she supported her family and they in turn supported her. She was surrounded by this group of women all toiling in the household to support her, you know, as like the breadwinner, in this kind of brilliant feminist household in a way. And I think that in her work, yes, in the end, there's a lot of marriages at the end of them, but I think she showcases the choices that women have to make, whether that is for love or for money or for security. And she showed every version of what happens to women in different circumstances. Like in Persuasion, for example, like Persuasion is my favourite. And she shows so many examples of womanhood and what can befall women, including, you know, the sort of bright young girl who hurts herself and ends up becoming a more serious character, getting together with a more serious Captain Bennet. You see Anne, who is kind of broken by love or by heartache that she brought on herself, and then sort of finding her bloom again, but being subject to a mercenary proposal from Mr. Elliot, or near proposal. And then also you see Mrs. Smith as well, her friend Mrs. Smith, who's a widow, who's like been left with nothing, and that's what could happen to you. So I feel like all the female characters support each other. She shows us Mrs. Smith to go, this is what Charlotte Lucas would have been if she hadn't married Collins, and she didn't want that. It's not great for women. In truth, one thing she doesn't really write about, which she could have, but I've learnt about through reading other spin-off things like Jill Hornby's excellent books like Miss Austen and The Elopement, is that the fate of women, if they did marry, also wasn't great. If you were fertile and you had child after child after child after child, like the Austens, her extended family was, they lived relatively quite long actually, but a lot of the women would just have, you know, 13 children and then die when they had the next one. So it was a difficult lot for, as someone who often wishes she lived in Regency times, I have to just remind myself, no, you probably didn't. So sorry, what a long answer.
No, it's great.
Yes, I think she was a feminist.
And which of her heroines do you kind of most admire for showing that kind of early female independence?
I think, sorry, I'm trying to choose.
No.
I had not prepared this. In a way, Fanny in Mansfield Park, who's one of the least loved heroines, but it's Fanny who says no when she really is pressured to say yes. You know, I feel like Lizzie saying no to Mr. Collins is based in her being romantic, her recognise he's an absurd character, so he's very easy to say yes to. But Fanny saying no to offers that would change her life and her family's life, but like she just has this much quieter sense of justice for herself and what's right and wrong, this quiet morality, but also a feeling of like, no, I'm not just going to marry someone because people expect me to. I feel like she's an interesting case for that, because it's, because of, in a way, she's not a confident person, so her saying no sort of signifies more.
No, definitely, thank you. So, can we talk a bit about Austentatious?
Sure.
Which I'm sure lots of you have seen. If you haven't,
I'm sure lots of you haven't.
Please
as well.
Please do go and see it. So, how did that all come about?
That came about me and a few friends mucking about in a school hall. We weren't at school. We used to work for a school, and I started doing improv in my early 20s, and once we were all living in London, in the improv circuit, it's very incestuous, and you hop around lots of different groups and play games with each other, and this was just one of those. It was me and my friend Amy initially had the idea of doing a literary long-form narrative improv thing, which has been happening, you know, all over the world for decades, but we wanted to do our thing, and we chose Jane Austen because Jane Austen suits improv much more than a lot of other authors, because it's got a huge cast of characters, it's loads of dialogue, and it's very witty, and it just suited it much more than, say, like Dickens would, or Bronte, sort of too serious or descriptive. And then we got a gang together of 6 of us, met Carrie Lloyd, met Graham Dixon. We played to 12 people above a pub in Leicester Square, which was a sold-out show, our first sellout. And then we played above a bigger room above a pub for like a year. And then we went to the Edinburgh Fringe, which was a huge hit on the free Fringe. So we just collected change in a bucket afterwards. And it went really well, and it just kept growing and growing. And now it's like in the West End, and we're playing to, big theatres. It's very much a do your own thing. It's still ours. We're a limited I've had to learn how to run a limited company, which is mad. But we've always kept it absolutely. It's just, we started it as what feels like kids, and now we're a big theatre thing.
So how does it kind of work? What kind of rules you have to have, or are you just? I mean, is it absolutely purely improv, or
it is absolutely purely improv? Yeah, there's no hidden structure. I know some improv shows, not many actually, fewer than people think, but I think there may be 1 or 2 that do have a very loose idea of structure. The only structure that we have is the structure of telling a story. So, we know that you have to figure out between you in the first couple of scenes, who is this story about, which isn't always easy. With 6 people on stage, all playing together, you have to try to develop an awareness of who are we going to pull around in this story, who are we going to centre it around. And then you have to put them through the ringer a bit in one way or another, provide obstacles, work out what they want to get. And it's a Jane Austen story, so there will be perhaps a class struggle, perhaps there will be a difficult relative, a mistake made in the past, who knows? Like, across the 6 books, there's a really big wealth of storylines there, actually. It's not just, enemies to lovers. And you would hope there will be a romantic thread in there. So that's it. That's all we have in our head, is how to tell a story. And it's not always perfect, but what people like about Austentatious is that you can absolutely see the joins. And I think that's what's nice about it. We stand on the sidelines rather than in the wings watching, partly because we have to know what's going on stage, and we can leap in when we need to. But the audience can see us enjoying what our friends do, and occasionally not being able to not laugh.
So that must all have helped you kind of shape your novel, did it?
I think it probably did subconsciously. Definitely the world building, and the language and the manners of it. Having acted out and improvised so many stories, I think it will have definitely helped it. But I think while I was writing the book, it felt quite separate from Austentatious. It felt like its own thing.
And does it always work?
In Austentatious? No. I would hope to the audience, yes.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. I think most audiences would come away thinking, wow, they wrapped up the story. How did they do that?
Yeah.
And we backstage are going, oh God, that was terrible. Our goal for the show would always be to have more than one thread to a story that gets knotty and gets tied up, but also, crucially, that it's not just funny, that there is an emotional heft to it. If the audience at no point has gone, then we don't feel like it's been a good enough show.
Yeah. So what's been the best, what one kind of really worked?
Oh, blimey. What's been a good one?
What was the most enjoyable?
The ones I remember are just our first, because we've done 700 now, so it's really hard. It's really hard to remember. Tring was good, wasn't it? How many years ago was that? 3 years ago. The ones I remember are the early Edinburgh Fringe ones, I think because we hadn't done that many then, they stick more in my head. I remember one, I remember a terrible one, which is we asked for a made-up Jane Austen book title, and sometimes they're a pun on an existing one, like Mansfield Shark, or Everything Emma Wears All at Once was a clever one, or The Empire Line Strikes Back. But someone just shouted out, Hamlet. So we did Jane Austen's Hamlet, and it was really hard to do. That's the hardest one, is if you're trying to do an existing story but make it Jane Austen, and that was impossible. I do remember doing one, Darcy and Bingley, Forbidden Love. It was so beautiful. It was really lovely. I remember doing that. Yeah. Those moments of them stick in your head.
Oh, brilliant. What is sort of next? Like, have you got an idea up your sleeve now this has worked so well?
No one's asked me to, but if they do, I've got 4 book ideas, and I need to work out what's next. 2 of them, like, just contemporary fiction ideas that are nothing to do with Jane Austen.
Oh, yeah.
And I've got a couple of Jane Austen ideas if anyone wants them. One of them is Persuasion. Difficult to know because it's less well known, in terms of I feel like you're onto a winner with the Pride and Prejudice spin-off. People know it so well. But with Persuasion, the story that I mentioned earlier of Louisa Musgrove, who's one of the silly young sisters who falls and smashes her head in Lyme Regis and ends up engaged to Captain Bennet, who's a very serious, heartbroken, bereaved character. And we find out that they got together just through report. Our heroine Anne Elliot finds out about it and is really surprised. But I think that might be interesting, because again, you could include the beginnings of Persuasion in that story. Yeah. But then those 2 characters must go through such a change. For him to be able to find love again means he's changed, but also for her to go from, I think, who she's described as at the start of Persuasion to someone who could fall in love with him, who's so serious and, I don't know, sort of profound. Yeah. Means I think she must have changed as well, perhaps after the fall. So there's a love story there I'm interested in. I'm also interested in Jane Fairfax, in Emma, who is the more natural heroine than Emma. She's the one who's had no money and difficult relatives and is crossed in love. But I've heard that Andrew Davies is also doing that. So I think he'll probably win that battle.
Yeah. Oh, well, really looking forward to seeing if there's more to come.
Thank you.
Do you want to read us another extract?
Oh, I forgot. Yeah, I've got another reading. I'll just do that. So what's happening here? So this is when I chose this bit because it's a bit of Pride and Prejudice. I mentioned the Kent visit that you might remember. The gentleman, Colonel Fitzwilliam and Darcy, leave Kent first. And we never really, after Darcy has unsuccessfully proposed to Lizzie, and we obviously never see much of that farewell. So I imagined what might have happened as they said goodbye. Let me just choose where to start from. Oh yes, so Charlotte and Colonel Fitzwilliam they've had some really interesting conversations. Obviously, Charlotte is married, needless to say, everyone's aware of that. But they've just had a bit of a connection conversationally and a few moments of going, oh, you're nice at this stage. But anyway, he's leaving, and he sort of flirted with Lizzie as well, so it's not a thing. So that's where we are when he comes to take his leave. She says, does it make you very sad? He says, I'm not in a position to propose to Lizzie anyway, so don't worry about that. He says, perhaps it is unfair, but it is as I always knew it would be. I'm the younger son. My brother inherited all, which was not so much as one might think. I've always known my living would not suit a wife, even a rich one, if truth be told, said Colonel Fitzwilliam. What a waste, said Charlotte quietly, and then caught her own meaning and flushed. She hurried on, Does it make you very sad not to have that choice? Thinking of Eliza. I hope you will forgive me if I say I am not heartbroken. I trust I have not raised Miss Bennet's hopes. I believe neither of us have been entirely invested, and I have been as open with her about my situation as I am with you now. I'm glad of it, said Charlotte, relieved. He went on with some hesitation. I have been remarkably lucky to find the company I have these last few weeks. Yes, Elizabeth has enjoyed your company too, and she will rally soon enough. She has other, she will rally. I do not doubt it, but I did not only mean Miss Bennet. He paused, looking at her more intensely. I have greatly enjoyed our talks, Mrs. Collins. It is a pleasure to be understood by another, and that is what I have felt with you. I thank you for it. It has been a privilege to become better acquainted with you. His eyes seared into her own. He continued, in fact, I have never felt as... That is enough, said Charlotte in an urgent tone. The Colonel was taken aback. I am sorry, I do not really know you, and you do not know me. Charlotte would not meet his eyes. She went on hotly, I am glad our talks have been a solace to you, which must surely be because, as a clergyman's wife, I am a safe harbour for confidences. I do not think of you in that way, interrupted the Colonel too quickly. She finally looked at him. His silence spoke more than his previous words had. Taking a sharp breath, she stood suddenly, expecting it to break their conversation. He did not join her, but stayed seated exactly where he was, his head at her waist, his body still as if contemplating what he would do next. She waited quietly, hardly breathing, as he slowly rose until he stood over her, looking down. His eyes roamed her face, her hair. Finally, he said, I thank you for hearing me, Mrs. Collins, and until we meet again, I wish you well. He took a step back out of the pew and, standing in the aisle, took her bare hand, which was rough and soiled from vines and leaves and tying string, and kissed it. He walked out of the church, and Charlotte stayed standing there in the dim light, looking at the open door, holding one hand over the one he'd kissed, as if she could preserve it like a pressed flower. Bit of romance for you, little bit of romance, I thought.
Brilliant. So, has anyone got questions? I'm sure lots of you have got questions. Have we got some questions for Rachel? I think Ben's going to come with a microphone.
I've only just got the book, so I've only read the first 2 chapters while waiting.
Good work, quick work then.
Very funny, and I've been told
Thank
to
you.
stop laughing by my son. So I'm wondering, how do you get the humour and the comedy into it? Does it come naturally from the characters as you're writing, or do you have to work hard to put it in?
Yes, that's exactly how I felt. I felt like Jane Austen gifted us Mr. Collins and Lady Catherine and Mrs. Bennet, who continues to be a source. Like, Mrs. Bennet was so easy to write comedy, and it was like a toy to play with, to put her in other circumstances. We see her much later in Charlotte's story, actually, where they're both in very different circumstances, but to have her as already such an easy point of humour was an absolute gift. There is humour elsewhere, but I would say the easiest source was, in the characters. Thank you.
Do you feel Charlotte would have chosen to marry Mr. Collins, or did he just happen to be available at the right time?
I think she chose. I think she saw her opportunity. The way that I've written Charlotte is, we see, and I do a flashback to this as well, we see the lead up, this isn't the situation she's in at 27. She hasn't just found herself there as a surprise. There's been years, season after season after season of not finding a match. And while I don't think she's someone who would be unhappy in her own company, if money was no factor and if security was no factor, I think she could easily have been a very happy single woman. But I think that at that point in her life, she was probably looking for opportunities to secure herself. And I think Jane Austen suggests that she was artful in getting Mr. Collins to visit. And I'm like, good for you. I think she chose it.
Those flashbacks, like that first ball she goes to, and her sort of hopes and, you know.
Yeah, we
dashed.
see, her early in her, her first,
She's
when
very
she first
different,
comes
isn't
out,
she?
her first
Yeah.
outing, and it's rather a bit sad,
Hello there.
Hello.
Hi. I've heard the first hour on Audible, and it's absolutely brilliant. So thank you so much. Just carrying on from the question that you were just asked, how do you think Jane Austen would feel about the journey that you've given, Caroline?
Well, I don't know. I think one thing is if Jane Austen didn't like it, she would say. She would say. She was we know from her letters, she was very honest and brilliantly cutting about things that she didn't approve of. But I hope that she would recognise that it's been written in absolute admiration of her, at the very least, and with a sensitivity to what she was trying to do. She probably wouldn't like the sex scenes, but can't have everything.
Thank you very much. Do improv and novel writing live in completely separate worlds?
Ooh, good question. I think, for me, I think there has to be overlap, because I think when I am coming to do improv with my group, in the full costume and the manners and my voice changes when I'm in character and everything, I think I can't help but think of it in a novelistic way. I think I've always got storytelling, but I've got Jane Austen storytelling at the back of my head, and I think the map of a story of how I enjoy a novel certainly affects how I try to map out an improvised story. The only thing is, you've got 6 people with their own idea of how the story should go, so you have to give way and you have to listen. And I think improv certainly affected, perhaps obliquely, my novel writing, because I would go this way and that way, and I think I would play out ideas in my head and then try to... I think I often found it quite hard to commit to what is the right one, the certainty of getting it down on the page and it being published, and I'm like, I could do any number of things. I can't show you them all. But yeah, I think they do go hand in hand, at least for me. Thank you.
Hello.
Hello.
Is it easy to forget about the interpretations of all the Mrs. Bennets and all the Elizabeths in the films that we've all seen? Or do you find them influencing you rather than as though you had only read the books?
In all honesty, when it comes to Mrs. Bennet, it's the 95 Mrs. Bennet through and through. Like, her voice, her characterization was so distinctive, and she's like the OG Mrs. Bennet for me. I think, I'm trying to remember the age I would have been. Yeah, so I'd already watched the 95 by the time I studied Pride and Prejudice at GCSE, so I feel like a lot of those impressions had already been stamped in my mind. That became less true. I think I started off with the 95 Collins in my head, but as I wrote him, and as I wrote him as a child, and all these different ages and all the different things happened to him, that changed. So then they went out of my head and they became something new. But I would say for the more secondary characters, I just lived through. I lived through mostly the 1995 Pride and Prejudice version,
Hi, Rachel.
Hello.
As someone who's been immersed in the Austen world through Austentatious,
many years,
with this being the sort of the same medium that Jane would have written in, of course, would you say you have a very different relationship or feeling towards Jane in this sort of more similar medium as she had?
Yeah, definitely. Like, obviously, Jane's been such a big part of my life now for 15 years in a certain way, and often in a light-hearted way, building together with a team a story. And it is a comedy show. Of course, we reach for emotion, but above all, it's a comedy show. And I would say, my relationship with Jane through writing the novel has certainly strengthened it and deepened it. I've found even the way that I've read Pride and Prejudice and other novels since writing this has changed. I think I would read them and really enjoy them. But the depth with which I had to read Pride and Prejudice, looking for clues, a little bit like a detective actually, meant that I was able to find more in them than I could before. To be honest, not necessarily as a plus. Like I think I want to retain a bit of lightness and a bit of pleasure in it. But I do think, yeah, my relationship with Jane Austen is deepened through the novel.
Was it hard to know when to stop writing the novel, or did you have a clear idea you were going to follow Charlotte up to a certain point in her life?
It was hard. No, it was hard, and the ending wasn't clear to me. I did have a plan when I pitched the book for how it would end, but wow, that was a huge conversation that went on and on, really until towards the final, submitting the final draft of how to end her story. And I still feel, like I said with the improv, like I feel like I had to choose one, and I've chosen what I've chosen, but there were different options. I wanted to honour her spirit, I wanted to honour her as a woman, but I also, it's very important to me to honour the reality of what she'd been through, what Colonel Fitzwilliam had been through, what Mr. Collins had, what has happened in the novel, which will make sense when you read it. But I wanted it to be rooted. I can say I'd written a sort of rom-com ending with a carriage chase, and it was very kind of, you know, Love Actually, kind of like going for your woman, and I scrapped that because it felt untrue. It didn't feel truthful to what I wanted to do. So yeah, I suppose my answer is I struggled with the ending, but I'm happy with what I chose.
Was this something you could talk through with the rest of the Austentatious team if you were having issues? Did you speak to Carrie and any of the others?
No, I couldn't. They're too close to it. And actually I found that because they know Austen so well, and because we all love Austen, I knew that they would have thoughts about it, and I knew they would have opinions. And actually it was something that I felt more input into that I wouldn't benefit from. I already had myself and my editor and my other editor, and I was like, I think between the three of us we can map out a good roadmap. But no,
Firstly, were they itching to give advice or not?
No, I think they recognised it. They were like, we'll keep our distance from.
Have they read it now?
They've now, they read it straight away. Yeah, they were lovely,
they love
very
it?
supportive. Yeah, they do, yeah.
Yeah, amazing. Over there.
What's your strategy work-wise? So obviously you've got lots of different kind of things going on, comedy and Austentatious and writing now. How do you compartmentalise and do one thing at a time, or how do you kind of balance those different strands?
Writing the novel was a bit of an anomaly for me in terms of that. So I would say like the rest of my career, which has got lots of different things happening, it's just a shambolic balance. I don't know how we do it with, me and my husband are both in the same job and balancing, looking after our child and doing all these random things is shambolic. The novel, though, I was very lucky because they said yes to it at a point where I didn't have much other work on, and what I did have, and I could basically avoid work. It was in like winter months where there wasn't much happening anyway. I didn't have a tour in the diary. I did carry on doing Austentatious, which I figured could only help, and it did. But that's pretty much all I did. But I had to write it very fast because of the anniversary. My publishers, which I hadn't clocked when I pitched it last autumn, and the publishers said yes in December and said, do it quick. We need to get it out next year. So it was a fast process. So that gave me, in a way, that was lucky because I had a solid 4 months where I could just murk it, basically. And I didn't really have much other work on. If I write a book again, I don't know how I got lucky with having nothing else on. But yeah, I tried to be very diligent and just write every hour I could, and at night after putting the kids to bed and stuff like that. Oh, there is just one more.
Oh, is there?
Forgive me if you already made this clear in your intro,
Yes.
but were you and the other members of the Ostentation cast mainly from an English and drama student background, I'm guessing?
I didn't make it clear, no. Some were, some weren't. So we were in our mid-20s by the time we formed Austentatious. I did music, but I had also done a drama school MA as well, and was getting no work at all. Carrie Lloyd had done English and years of improv. Great. There were four English degrees between us. Joe, Andy, no drama training. So a mix. I think like 2 or 3 of us had some drama training, but our main training was in improv, which we had all started learning when we were about 20. So we'd been doing it for about 5 years by the time we got started. It was funny because we thought we were like experts in improv after 5 years. Now we feel like
Well, I don't know how
doing
you
it a very
do it.
long
I
time.
think it's such a skill, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, but it's a brilliant thing. If anyone has any interest, any age, if you ever get the opportunity to do an improv class, it's the most freeing, fantastic type of performing that you can do. I loved it straight away as soon as I started doing it, and it can sound scary from the outside, but it's not, because you cannot make a mistake. There is nothing you can do wrong, and it's just the most joyful performing that you can do.
Yeah. Wow. Do we have any more questions at all?
I'd like to ask the modern day Jane Austen. Who would she be, and what would she be like?
Ooh, interesting.
Would she be you?
I don't know. I'm quite trad, really, compared to Jane. I've got married and had a kid. It's hard to know, isn't it? Because I would think, well, we don't know what she looked like at all. Like the portrait that everyone has of her is not definitely her at all. I think we've got a picture of the back of her head that is confirmed as her. So it's hard to know again if she liked the independence or if she just didn't meet the right person. But I do think she was clearly ambitious and industrious. So I think she would be known today. You know what I mean? I think she would be like a personality, no matter whether she'd be writing novels or whether she would be on TV or a columnist or a politician. I don't know, but I think she would have something to say for the world to listen to.
Right, well, Rachel, it's been brilliant to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
You know, lots of you have bought this with your ticket, but if you haven't, I really recommend you get one at the end, because it's just the most warm, witty, wonderful sequel to a brilliant novel. And it's been really fascinating to hear more about it. So
thank you.
Thank you so much. And can we give a massive round of applause to Rachel?
Thank you so much.
And a big thank you to Harriet Quarrell for the interview.
Pleasure.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
So as Harriet says, the shop is still open. Rachel will be through on the right in the foyer signing books.
I'll be signing and dedicating to anyone you would like me to. I brought special pens for it.
Brilliant.
Brilliant. Fantastic.